What up, everyone? Just to try to make this quick as possible. So, I just did a story the other day about how, we have this new deadline for October 31st because the licensing board couldn't seem to get their shit together and get somebody out to inspect your facility or make it through your application or whatever. They got so many applications and it's so hard to do all this work that they're doing, especially when they're getting paid $48,000 every time someone gets a license for the assessment fee. But somehow they just can't keep up with the flow of these applications, which I still think is not very many. I mean, we look at how many they've already given out. Like, we're talking about 50-ish, and that's for all facilities. I think we have somewhere around 30 dispensaries statewide now licensed, maybe. And no actually licensed product that has been produced, tested, processed, and all that in a licensed facility is anywhere in sight. So, anyway, let's go ahead and read this. And we're going to be checking a couple other stories that also hit the waves today. And it was like, basically they overwhelmed this story. This story was like buried way down under it. From what I understand, that it has been picked up by the Detroit News and whatever. So we'll see. But when I looked for medical marijuana news in Michigan today, all I was seeing was, oh, everybody's got to shut down tomorrow. It's gonna suck. All these places are gonna shut down. Here's how many. We'll check those out too. But let's just go ahead and read this by Larry Gabriel of the Metro Times, which that's where I got the story that I went off of the other day when I was talking about the deadline in that clip. So let's check this out. This is an update. The October 31st deadline for unlicensed marijuana provisioning centers to shut down has been extended. Court claims Judge Stephen L. Borello issued a temporary restraining order and an order to show cause on Tuesday against the state of Michigan and Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. So if even one person that watched the clip that I made the other day called the judge here, or called Laura, or called their state rep, or anybody else that might have been able to get through to this, well, the judge, he's the same judge that did the last stay back in September when we had a deadline then. The deadline was set by Michigan Medical Marijuana Licensing Board in the emergency rules set on October 1st, but Costello found October 31st deadline arbitrary and capricious. I think he means to say Borello there, but maybe spell check got him autocorrect. Anyway, I think he's talking about the judge found that October 31st deadline arbitrary and capricious and ordered a show cause hearing for the state on November 9th, unless the state can successfully argue why those locations need to close down. Now, December 15th, a date the state had previously set, will be the cutoff date. And I would even argue, and it's just me, that December deadline is even still a little bit egregious and capricious and arbitrary, and you can't really justify it. You can justify it by saying, well, we gotta have an actual time when if you don't have a license, you're out of the game. How about this? You find the people that are trying to seek these licenses. They're there putting their applications in and whatnot. Work with them. Don't keep giving them deadlines. It's obvious that you just want to kick them out. That's clear as day when you say stuff like this. And we're going to see some quotes from some people up at Laura here from these other articles or whatever about that. So the November 9 hearing will take place after the November 6th election, when Proposal 1, which would legalize recreational marijuana, will be decided. Polls show overwhelming support for the proposal, and with that might come a blue wave. Ooh, I don't even know what that even means, because it ain't like Democrats are really that, savvy on marijuana policy, and I don't expect any state rep Democrats to go in there and repeal and replace the MMFLA either. So let's not get our hopes up, but it's possible. Back to the article, it's possible the next hearing will take place in a very different atmosphere regarding marijuana. I think that you know, the atmosphere of prohibition being cool and acceptable is already very diminished. But after that passes, yes, for sure, there's going to be this big feeling that, oh no, like, how are you going to continue to push these stupid ideas that we need to exercise the most abundance of caution when it comes to these licensing facilities and stuff. And let's not forget that the licensing of the facilities has been marred with nothing but corruption and just, you know, corporate takeover like you've never seen before. Like you don't see in any other industry. You don't see these arduous applications and intrusive into your finances and criminal record, or not even criminal record, just citation record and misdemeanor record. I guess you can consider a misdemeanor a crime if you get technical about it. So this is Kathleen Gray over at the Free Press, the resident weed writer, I guess. Marijuana dispensaries without licenses to be ordered to shut down. This article did, in all fairness, come out last night, so I guess this was before the judgment today, and it's the same with this other article. But there, when you search, that's what you see. I had to be real specific about what I was looking for here. Medical marijuana, marijuana news, Michigan, judge blocks deadline. I mean, I had to put all that in there to get this. Maybe Google just knows me and they don't like me or something. I don't know. So anyway, even though the Michigan Medical Marijuana Licensing Board approved 14 more cannabis businesses on Monday, after 215 are facing another 215 are still facing closure as the Wednesday deadline approaches. The 215 marijuana businesses have been operating under temporary emergency rules that expire on Halloween. Those businesses, mostly dispensaries and many in Detroit, will receive cease and desist letters on Thursday and must close if they want to have any chance of getting a license in the future. And that's one of the big things. It's like, okay, some of these places really don't care whether they get a license or not. And I get that Laura wants to weed them people out. And you're not going to know who those people are until you have a real deadline. I get that too. But meanwhile, they're not really harming anybody. And by the way, if you just pull the rug out from under all those people, the people that's really going to suffer is the patients. And I defend all of these dispensaries. So if you're still open and you still got your like sign up with, you know, $5 grams or whatever you got, I'm still sticking up for you. I don't think any of these dispensaries should be closed down, period, ever. If they can't afford the $48,000 assessment fee because they're not one of these dispensaries in Detroit that makes a lot of money, they're just somebody in the middle of nowhere that don't get that kind of revenue to be able to just drop another $50,000 besides all the other money they had to spend to get up into compliance. And what if they did all that so that their facility was up to speed, but you're not coming by to give them an inspection? What's going on there? There's a lot of stuff going on here. The state isn't sure whether all of the 215 businesses are actually still operating and should have a list of the businesses that will have to shut down by next week. The state set the deadline as a means to get the medical marijuana market fully functioning and force those businesses that have submitted incomplete applications to either get in the rest of their documentation and join the fully regulated and taxed market for legal medical weed or shut down. And that sentence there, I don't know if she's just stenographer for Laura, but that sounds basically like they're just blaming the applicants for them not getting their licenses yet. Now, a lot of it isn't that they haven't filled out their application all the way. It's that they did everything and they're just doing, the only thing that they haven't done yet is churned over that $48,000 assessment fee. So unless they're waiving those, I don't know. You can't just totally blame. And then also don't forget that they have to come and inspect the facility before you can even go on to the rest of the application process. That's not the fault of people that put in applications. That's the fault of Laura not being able to do all these inspections. Or maybe they don't want to do some of them. I don't know what's going on. Quote, "We've been diligently working through this backlog from the very beginning," said Andrew Briscoe, director of the state's Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation. And I just, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you guys have really been working hand over foot, busting your backs, trying to get these inspections done, trying to get through these applications, then you should definitely push the deadline back a little bit more if you know you can't get to all the applications no matter how much you've been working through it. One of the greatest frustrations with the process is without a firm deadline in place, we don't get responses from the applicants, especially from the temporary ones who appear to want to stay in the game as long as possible without being regulated or taxed. And I get that there are some people out there that are doing that, and it's because they know that they're gonna end up not being able to get the license and move forward, and that's sad because they've already been operating for a period of time with the blessing of their local municipality, serving patients and not doing anything illegal, or they would have been busted anyway already by now. So, I mean, besides the one that where you say, oh, it's illegal for them to even run a dispensary. I'm not talking about that one. So, I don't know. I mean, come on, man. I think this can be done without bloodshed. The local market will be far more limited in access to medical cannabis, not only due to the licensed dispensaries not opening, but more so the amount of time it takes for growers and processors to fulfill orders, he added. And this is from Rush Hassan, Director in Business Development for the dispensary of The Reef in Detroit, one of the ones that might have to close down. And remember, there's going to be another meeting on November 8th, so they might put more licenses out then. We don't know, But he said that processors need an additional 3 to 4 months on top of the 6-month growers take to finalize their product. The licensing board approved licenses for 8 dispensaries, 1 each in Jackson, Burton, Omer, Ann Arbor, and Pinconning, and 3 in Detroit. 3 processors in Frederick, Pinconning, and Jackson, and 3 licenses for large grow operations in Augrays. It also denied 12 dispensary applications, 1 each in Jackson, Bay City, River Rouge, Ypsilanti, 2 in Flint, 6 in Detroit, 1 processor, and 2 growers. Quote, we looked at the financial ability and experience, and some had some tax history issues, Brisboe said of the businesses that were denied on Monday. And that just goes right along with what I said. These people are operating in places that maybe they don't have the revenue to fulfill the financial ability that you expect out of these mega $1 million facilities. And it's ridiculous. This is just basically saying, oh, you know what? We told you that there's no small businesses allowed here, right, guys? So what are you even thinking? It's ridiculous. And then you're talking about the people that have tax history issues. I mean, that's because you always discouraged anybody that's working within the auspices of the medical marijuana laws we had before from showing any money on paper. So of course they're going to have tax history issues. This is just clearly they're trying to kick the old out to bring the new in and to clear out the competition for the new people that they want to take over this shit. It's obvious, guys. It's obvious. Quit being so obvious about it, and we'll quit trying to block your deadline. One of the first things you could do is probably make it so it would be easier to get a license for these people. You can look at one of these places that you don't think is going to be able to do the financial obligations and make some adjustments on your end if they're doing okay and people are happy with them being in their town and all. I don't understand why you'd want to shut down any existing dispensary other than to clear the way for the corrupt people that are going to get new licenses. That's it. And I know it's not fair to the people that paid all that money to get their license and they paid their taxes to have the undue competition, which is why you should try to make that a thing that those people can get into the regulated system. It's not fair. It's totally not fair, and nobody is happy about this. And I'm not even talking about caregivers that completely are getting cut out of being able to take their overage to dispensaries, which is how dispensaries were even allowed to exist before, because they wouldn't have had product any other way. Now you have all these people that used to do that aren't allowed to do that anymore. I'm not even mentioning them. So far, 804 applications have been received, 120 have been approved, 79 have been denied, 16 have been put on inactive status because the applicants haven't turned in necessary information in a timely manner. And another one there. It's just like they're looking for ways to just not like bring people into the system themselves and then blame us. What about that? The applicants didn't turn in certain things in a timely manner, but since you put them on hold, are they still going to be able to turn those in, or do they got to wait until the next process? Do they got to shut down? Who knows? There was one more thing I wanted to look at right quick. Oh, that's a lot. But anyway, this is also weed writer from MLive. Medical Marijuana Board says they'll offer some grace during the licensing crackdown. Well, I'm glad that the licensing crackdown's not going to happen, all right? So here's your, Don Bailey and Rick Johnson. These are the guys on the board that don't belong there. This guy's a former sergeant at the state police and probably still has lots of police buddies and don't like anything to do with medical marijuana or marijuana. We already know he's a prohibitionist. Why is he on the medical marijuana board? Because Michigan's a corrupt government and a piece of shit overall, and he was handpicked by Rick Snyder, the most corrupt criminal governor in the history of the country almost, by the numbers, who literally poisoned a whole town using undemocratic dictator called emergency manager system. And then you got Rick Johnson, who is a lobbyist against and for marijuana licenses. Like, why is this guy involved? It's like corruption in your face. The majority of the members of the state's medical marijuana licensing board said they would offer some clemency to certain businesses as an October 31st licensing deadline looms. State regulators are trying to push medical marijuana businesses that have been temporarily operating under emergency rules to apply and pay for state license. After Wednesday, October 31st, any medical marijuana retail shop has to close, we know. But the deadline has changed several times. After a court case pushed the date back from September 15th to December 15th, state regulators announced that they would be moving it up to October 31st. Rick Johnson, chairman of the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board, said he's heard the complaints about the move. I hear you. I've heard a lot of it, and I appreciate all the concerns about the supply of marijuana, Johnson said. I also appreciate the need to move forward to a regulated market and ensure patient safety. That's not an issue. That's not even an issue. These dispensaries all do their own, basically regulate themselves. They all get their products tested in labs, and patients know. Patients wouldn't go buy, pay money for inferior medicine at a dispensary. Are you kidding? Johnson said he does not intend to deny any applicant at the next licensing board meeting on November 8th who does not operate their facility after October 31st, but keeps their existing marijuana products. It's kind of confusing. He does not intend to deny any applicant at the next licensing board meeting who does not operate their facility after. So basically, if you're operating after October 31st, you have 1 week where you can still operate with your existing marijuana products, but after that November 8th meeting, who knows? So that means that they do not transfer or receive any new product after 10/31. How can they? I mean, you're talking about cutting. That's what you're talking about right there. That's where you're talking about cutting caregivers off from being able to take product to the dispensary and selling it to the dispensary so they can sell it, which is how it should work. That's how it's been working for 8 years. Everybody was happy with it. Well, 10 years. It's been working like that for about 10 years, and everybody's been pretty happy with it. I haven't heard too many people out there like, oh, I'm glad that we're getting rid of those dirty old dispensaries that were selling garbage. I've never heard those complaints. He also said, I won't use this single criteria as a disqualifier. I will evaluate the applicant as a whole. Two other board members, David LaFonte and Vivian Packard, said they would support Johnson's approach, giving Johnson the majority of the votes. Board members Donald Bailey said he did not agree with Johnson. In the interest of public safety, I cannot support that. He doesn't want caregivers to be able to sell to a dispensary yesterday. He don't even want dispensaries around. This guy's a prohibitionist. What's he doing on the board? So this is what you get with a board that's handpicked by a bunch of corrupt politicians. Is they're trying to kick caregivers all the way out as soon as possible, and the best you're going to get is that caregivers are now the ones that have the deadline of October 31st being the last time that they can actually sell any products to these dispensaries. Now keep in mind that none of this is actually true, because today we have a whole new story to report to you that this deadline got bumped to whoever knows when. But you know, they're gonna have to do something about what this deadline is on this November 9th hearing, at the show cause hearing. So we'll, you know, I'll do an update when the time comes, but between now and then, all this stuff I'm telling you about that they hashed out before that judgment and request for show cause, this don't, you know, this is what they wanted to do. This is where the heart is of the medical marijuana board in Michigan. This is where their heart is. They really got heart, don't they? And this is throwing patients under the bus, because they're the ones that needs to go to the dispensaries, people that don't have caregivers and no other way to get medical marijuana. And it throws the caregivers that were transferring their overage to the dispensaries, it throws them under the bus. Makes them so they don't have any, there's no recourse for them. And after all this goes into effect, there will be no recourse for them. And the only thing you can think of is the easiest, the least path of resistance for a patient to then get medicine is going to be to go right to these caregivers that have the overage and straight up buy it right in their living rooms, which is the exact thing that having dispensaries was supposed to solve the problem of. David Harns, spokesman for the State Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation, said the board was within its prerogative to take that approach. And the fifth board member, Nicole Cover, did not comment on Johnson's statement. Harns was like, yeah, they could do whatever they want. Of course, they don't care. They just want to see the money coming in. So today, we already said this. Last week, the state saw its first retail sale of medical marijuana that was grown, processed, tested, and transported at a licensed business in Detroit. The sale marked a key point for the medical marijuana industry in Michigan as officials work to add regulations and oversight. It's ridiculous. Comments are always, these days, comments don't have a lot of trolls in it, don't have a lot of people that are anti-marijuana. So let's check a couple of them out. A bad set of rules. Slippin' Jimmy broken it bad. This stinks horribly of corruption. The board made illegal rules to treat different classes of dispensaries with different rules, thus wasting massive amounts of time and creating red tape they knew was uncrossable by many of these dispensaries. Yes. And then they proceeded to get slapped down by the courts for it, and now they are moving that deadline back up to, again, shaft those same dispensaries that had attempted to shaft. Sounds as if some big money found their way into the pockets of these already approved big-time dispensaries who know competition will drive their profits down. And the fact is the competition's going to be better than the shit they have at these dispensaries. I guarantee it. Some grace, define grace in this time-sensitive legality terminology. Yeah, there's no grace. Michigan rated number 2 in corruption in the United States after Louisiana. I always thought they were number 1, but if you say so, I believe you. That's still number 2 out of, more than 50, I'm sure. Yeah, this is not very democratic or American. It's more like a dictatorship. 63% of the voters want recreational. Quit ignoring your constituents. We hope they won't be reelected. All these state reps are all up for reelection. Go in there and vote against any incumbent, because they've all been corrupted. And even if there's term limits, I know there's term limits there. But these term limiting things, they keep it within the party. They're just like gerrymandered districts, So if you see a Republican that's been there before, Just vote for the other thing. And if you see a Democrat, vote for the other thing. I don't care who you vote for. I'm not for either party. They're both corrupt as fuck, especially in Michigan. So I guess the best thing to do is try to get rid of unplug the power structure that's in the place where it's at. Because these term limited people, when they get to their last term, they do every goddamn corrupt thing in the book on their way out the door and vote for every piece of shit that the lobbyists push through. And that's the way Lansing's been since I've been alive. If you look up William Parfit, he's a big pharma billionaire who pays most Democrats running and runs Governor Snyder's PAC money. I'm sure all this has nothing to do with his relationship to the board. Thank you, Chris Wamoff, for exposing William Parfit. Someone has something to say here. Joe Dagenobes. The market should have been regulated years ago, right after we correctly voted in favor of medical cannabis. But unfortunately, for some reason, instead of following the law and doing the job voters approved you to do, our local politicians engage in years' worth of some asinine reefer madness jihad against patients and safe access. Don't look for a pat on the back now that you are finally being forced to do your job. Yeah, unfortunately, they're actually not caring about doing their job because they're not doing this for the people. They're doing this for the corporations. They're doing this for their big, fat-pocketed buddies like the Muchmores and like the Responsibility Council of Michigan. That's what this is all about, guys. This is the same people that just been trying to take over marijuana in Michigan since the activists let them know that we ain't stopping until we have it. And we're going to end prohibition as soon as we can. So abrogate Michigan, whoever's behind that now or whatever's going on with that, please, let's get that going again, man. We really need to get rid of prohibition in Michigan, or people like Rick Johnson and people like, this Donald Bailey. These guys are going to be running this shit. The recreational marijuana is going to be handed to the board, and the only difference is they don't have a medical marijuana licensing board. But are they going to have another board that's going to be staffed with a bunch of corrupt pieces of shit from both parties, especially the Republican side, where they've been lifelong prohibitionists? Now they're going to fucking tell you who can have a license or not? Come on, we can do better, man. This is bullshit. I didn't fight for this shit my whole life to have a bunch of fucking cops and crooked fucking politicians basically shut the whole thing down or give it all to their fucking rich buddies that don't know shit about marijuana, but all of a sudden they're the experts. All right, man, that's all I got. I could blow steam off on this shit for days, but I'm trying not to keep you for too long because there's more stories coming, and I'm sure I'll have updates on this one because this is the 4th time that this deadline has materialized and then been challenged and probably will get pushed back. So subscribe if you want to keep up with this bullshit.